The kiss wasn't planned, it wasn't romantic, it was survival, hers and his. When Eliza Harrow grabbed a bloodied stranger in a filthy alley and claimed him as her own in front of the city's most brutal enforcers, she thought she was saving an innocent man. She was wrong. The man she kissed wasn't innocent. He wasn't helpless. And he definitely wasn't who he said he was. What started as one reckless lie snowballed into deception, power, and a love that could destroy them both. This is their story, raw, messy, and absolutely unforgiving. If you're watching from somewhere in this world, drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this tale travels. And if you want to know how it ends, hit that like button and stick around. The air in Ashford smelled like coal dust and regret. Eliza Harrow had lived in this city long enough to know its rhythms, the clang of the factories at dawn, the rattle of carts on cobblestone, the hollow laughter of men who'd given up on anything better. 23 years in this industrial hellhole had taught her exactly three things: keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, and never ever get involved in someone else's problems. Tonight, she was about to break all three rules in spectacular fashion. She was walking home from Grimsby's bookshop, her worn coat pulled tight against the autumn chill that cut through Ashford's narrow streets like a knife. October had arrived with its usual cruelty, cold enough to make your bones ache, but not cold enough to kill the stench of the tanneries and slaughterhouses that lined the eastern quarter. Her fingers were numb despite the gloves she'd patched 3 times already, and her boots had developed a new hole that let in every puddle. The streets were emptying as the factory shifts changed. Workers trudged past her with dead eyes and bent backs, their faces gray with exhaustion. Eliza knew that look. She'd worn it herself plenty of times. She was thinking about the stack of penny dreadfuls that had come in that afternoon, thinking about how she'd sneak one home to read by candlelight, when she heard it. The sound that made every decent person in Ashford cross the street and pretend they were deaf. A scream. Male. Desperate. The kind that came from someone who knew exactly how bad things were about to get. Then laughter. Also male. Not desperate at all. Cold. Amused. The kind of laughter that accompanied broken bones and shattered teeth. Eliza slowed her pace. Her brain, the sensible part that had kept her alive this long, started issuing very clear instructions. Keep walking. Not your problem. Not your circus. Not your monkeys. Walk. Away. But curiosity was a weed she'd never managed to pull from her mind, and tonight it had roots that went deep. Her feet slowed. Stopped. Against every screaming instinct of self-preservation, she turned toward the sound. Craven Alley. Of course it was Craven Alley. Nothing good ever happened in Craven Alley. It was a narrow gap between 2 warehouses, barely wide enough for 2 men to stand shoulder to shoulder, with broken crates stacked at one end and a smell that suggested something had died there recently. 3 men. 1 victim. The enforcers wore the same black coats they always did, heavy wool with brass buttons, the kind that marked them as belonging to the Creditors Guild. Basically legalized thugs with fancy titles and the law on their side. The guild had been running Ashford's debt collection operations for 15 years, and in that time they'd perfected the art of breaking people. The man on the ground was maybe 30, brown hair matted with blood that looked black in the dim light. One arm was twisted at an angle that made Eliza's stomach turn. He wasn't fighting back anymore, just curled up in the filth, trying to protect his ribs while they took turns kicking him. "Please," he gasped between blows. I can pay. Just give me more time." "You've been given time," one enforcer said. He was bald, broad-shouldered, with a face like a brick wall and about as much compassion. He spoke with the kind of patience that was worse than rage, the tone of a man who'd done this 100 times and would do it 100 more without losing sleep. 3 months, Vale. Mr. Howell doesn't like waiting, and he especially doesn't like people who make promises they can't keep. The boot came down hard on the man's ribs. Eliza heard the crack from 15 feet away. The man, Vale, apparently, made a sound that wasn't quite a scream, more like all the air leaving his lungs at once. "That's 750 marks you owe," the bald enforcer continued, nudging Vale's shoulder with his boot. "With interest, we're looking at 800. You got 800 marks hiding somewhere, Vale?" No, didn't think so. The second enforcer, younger and meaner looking with a scar that split his left eyebrow, crouched down. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to keep coming back every week. And every week, we're going to take a little more. First your belongings, then your teeth, then fingers. Then, well, you get the idea. Unless you'd rather settle it all at once, the third man added. He was thin, weasel-faced, with the kind of smile that made you want to check your pockets. One clean break, quick, merciful. Can't pay a debt with broken legs, the bald one said. Can if we sell them to the factories. They're always looking for warm bodies. They were discussing it like they were haggling over the price of vegetables. Eliza's hands clenched into fists. Walk away. This isn't your problem. You can't save everyone. You can barely save yourself. But something about the man on the ground, the way he was trying so hard not to cry, the desperate animal fear in his eyes, reminded her of someone. Her brother. 3 years ago. Different alley, same situation. She'd walked away that time. 2 weeks later, they'd found Daniel floating face down in the river. Eliza's feet moved before her brain could stop them. Enough, she heard herself say. All three heads turned. The bald enforcer's eyes narrowed. Then he smiled. Evening, miss. Private matter here. Move along. Doesn't look private, Eliza said, stepping closer. Her heart was pounding so hard she could taste it, copper and fear. Looks like 3 grown men beating someone half to death in an alley. The young one with the scar straightened up, hand drifting to something under his coat. You his sister or something? Eliza's brain screamed, no, say no, turn around and run. Her mouth said, wife. The word hung in the air like smoke. The enforcer stared at her. The bloodied stranger on the ground stared at her with wide, stunned eyes. Blue, she noticed. Very blue. And completely, utterly confused. The bald enforcer's smile widened. His wife. That's what I said. Funny. Vale never mentioned having a wife. He's private about his personal life, Eliza said, praying her voice wouldn't shake. Can you blame him, given the company he keeps? The weasel-faced one laughed. She's got a mouth on her. She does, the bald one agreed. He took a step toward Eliza close enough that she could smell tobacco and something worse underneath. Old blood, maybe. Old violence. You really want to tie yourself to this man's debts, sweetheart? Because that's what you're doing. You claim him as your husband. You're claiming his problems too. Eliza's pulse hammered in her ears. She could feel sweat starting despite the cold. She looked down at the stranger, at Vale. He was staring up at her with those impossibly blue eyes, his face a mess of blood and bruising. One hand was pressed to his ribs where they'd kicked him. He looked like he wanted to say something. Warn her off, maybe. Help me out here, she thought desperately. He didn't. So Eliza did the only thing she could think of, the most insane, reckless thing she'd ever done in a life full of questionable decisions. She crossed the alley in 3 strides, dropped to her knees in the muck beside him, grabbed his face with both hands, and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't romantic. It was hard and desperate and tasted like copper and smoke and fear. She felt him go completely rigid with shock, felt his sharp intake of breath against her mouth, and for one horrible second she thought he was going to push her away and expose the whole lie. Then his hand came up to grip her sleeve, playing along. Thank God. His lips were split and bleeding, and kissing him felt like kissing broken glass, but Eliza held on, made it look real, made it look like she'd done this 1,000 times before. When she finally pulled back, she made sure the enforcers saw the fierce protective glare she turned on them. He's mine, she said, surprised by how steady her voice came out. And I'm taking him home. The bald enforcer studied her for a long moment. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between amused and impressed. Then he laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. All right, he said. All right, young love, how touching. He gestured to the other 2. We'll give you 3 days. Vale knows the terms. 800 marks, cash. 3 days from now, midnight, at the Guild House on Carpenter Street. He leaned down, getting close to Eliza's face. His breath smelled like rot. And if you don't show up with the money, we come for both of you. Understood? Eliza forced herself to meet his eyes. Understood. Good girl. He straightened up, adjusted his coat, and jerked his head toward the mouth of the alley. The other 2 followed him out, boots echoing on the cobblestones until the sound faded into the larger noise of the city. Eliza stayed on her knees, shaking. The stranger, Adrian Vale, was still staring at her. Who? He said hoarsely. The hell are you? Ashami. Getting him to his feet took longer than Eliza expected. Vale was tall, 6 feet at least, maybe more, and built solid, despite whatever privations had led him to owe 800 marks. His weight sagged against her shoulder as she hauled him upright, and he made a sound that was half groan, half gasp. Ribs, he managed. I heard them crack. That's comforting. Wasn't trying to be comforting. Can you walk? Do I have a choice? Not really. They stumbled out of Craven Alley and onto Faro Street, where the gas lamps flickered in the wind and a few late-night stragglers gave them wide berth. Eliza didn't blame them. They probably looked like exactly what they were. 2 people in way over their heads. Where do you live? She asked. Northwick, near the old church. Eliza bit back a curse. That's 20 minutes on foot. I'll manage. He didn't manage. 5 minutes in, his breathing had gone ragged and shallow, and Eliza could feel him favoring his left side so heavily that she was practically carrying him. By 10 minutes, he was dead weight. At 15, she was seriously considering leaving him propped against a wall and coming back with a cart. But somehow, through sheer bloody-minded stubbornness on both their parts, they made it. The boarding house was exactly the kind of place Eliza expected. Narrow, 4 stories of crumbling brick, with windows that didn't quite close and a front door that hung crooked on its hinges. A hand-painted sign read, Mrs. Caldwell's Rooms, Clean Beds, No Riffraff. You live here? Eliza asked. It's cheap. I can see why. She half-dragged him up 2 flights of stairs, ignoring the curious looks from a woman in a threadbare shawl who was sitting on the second-floor landing with a sleeping child in her lap. The woman's eyes followed them all the way up. Vale's room was at the end of the 3rd-floor hallway. He fumbled with the key for a solid minute before Eliza took it from him and unlocked the door herself. Inside, a bed, a chair, a small table, and a window that overlooked an alley full of garbage. A single candle stub sat in a chipped saucer. A few books were stacked in the corner, old leather-bound things that looked valuable. Home sweet home, Vale muttered. Eliza got him to the bed and let him collapse onto it. He made a sound that might have been relief or pain or both. She should have left. She'd done her good deed. She'd saved a stranger's life, possibly ruined her own in the process, and that was enough. More than enough. But she looked at him lying there, blood drying on his temple, one arm wrapped around his ribs, and something stubborn in her refused to walk away. Don't move, she said. Wasn't planning on it. She found a basin in the corner, cracked porcelain, probably older than she was, and took it down to the communal pump in the courtyard. The water was freezing and tasted like metal, but it was better than nothing. She grabbed a rag from a hook by the pump, ignored the woman who was filling a bucket and staring at her with undisguised curiosity, and headed back upstairs. Vale hadn't moved. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. Still alive? Eliza asked. Unfortunately. She pulled the chair over to the bed, dipped the rag in the water, and started cleaning the blood from his face. He flinched. Hold still. That hurts. Good. Maybe next time you'll dodge. Despite everything, he almost smiled. I'll keep that in mind. Up close, with the worst of the blood cleaned away, Eliza could see him properly for the first time. He had a strong face, sharp cheekbones, a straight nose that had probably been broken at least once, a jaw that was currently clenched tight against pain. The split lip would heal, the cut above his eyebrow would scar. The bruises along his jaw were already turning purple-black, but it was his eyes that caught her attention. Blue, that impossible, startling blue she'd noticed in the alley, and far too sharp for someone who'd just had his ribs broken. He was watching her. You didn't answer my question, he said quietly. What question? Who are you, and why in hell did you just do that? Eliza wrung out the rag. The water turned pink. Name's Eliza, Eliza Harrow, and I did it because I'm an idiot. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. She cleaned the cut above his eyebrow, carefully, because it was still bleeding, and he hissed through his teeth but didn't pull away. You saved my life, he said. I delayed your death. There's a difference. Semantics. Reality. Vale was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you. Eliza paused, rag halfway to his temple. Don't thank me yet. We've got 3 days to come up with 800 marks, or those bastards come after both of us. You might want to save your gratitude until we're not about to die. Fair point. She finished cleaning his face and moved to his hands. His knuckles were scraped raw, probably from trying to block the kicks. His fingers were long, elegant almost, not the hands of someone who worked in the factories. What do you do? She asked. For work, I mean. Vale hesitated. Whatever pays. That's vague. It's honest. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. He almost smiled again. I tutor, sometimes. Rich kids whose parents want them to read something other than racing forms. That explains the books. Some of them. And the rest? Mine. Expensive hobby. Better than drinking. Debatable. This time he did smile. A real one. Quick and crooked, there and gone. It changed his whole face. Made him look younger, less haunted. Eliza looked away. Your ribs need binding. You got anything I can use? There's some cloth in the trunk. Bottom drawer. She found it. Old shirts, mostly, torn into strips that suggested this wasn't the first time he'd needed binding. She helped him sit up, which involved a lot of swearing on his part and gritted teeth on hers, and wrapped his ribs as tight as she could manage. How's that? She asked. Terrible, but better than nothing. Inspiring review. I try. When she was finished, she sat back and looked at him properly. He was pale, sweating despite the cold, and clearly in more pain than he was letting on. But he was alive, conscious. That was something. So, Eliza said, Adrian Vale, tell me about this debt. His expression shuddered immediately. It's complicated. We've got time. Not much. More than we'll have if we don't figure this out. Vale? Adrian looked at her for a long moment. She could see him weighing it. Trust versus privacy. Need versus pride. Finally, he sighed. It's not my debt, he said. Not originally. Whose is it? My brother's. Eliza waited. His name was Marcus, Adrian continued, his voice careful, controlled, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized. He borrowed money from Howell 2 years ago, 500 marks. Our mother was sick, consumption, and the doctors cost more than we had. Marcus thought he could pay it back. He was working double shifts at the cannery, picking up side jobs, doing everything right. And she died anyway. Adrian's jaw tightened. 6 months after Marcus took out the loan, and by then, with Howell's interest rates, 500 had become 700. Marcus couldn't keep up, started missing payments, and then he stopped. Eliza leaned forward. Then what? He disappeared. The words hung heavy in the small room. Disappeared how? Eliza asked. Just gone. 6 months ago. Left his room, went to work, never came back. Adrian stared at the wall. I looked everywhere, asked everyone. No one saw anything. No one heard anything. It's like he just vanished. And Howell? Doesn't care. Dead or disappeared, the debt's still active. And I'm Marcus's closest living relative, which means it's mine now. That's... Eliza couldn't find a word bad enough. That's barbaric. That's Ashford. She hated how true that was. Hated how casually he said it, like it was just the way things worked, like there was no point fighting it. So you've been paying it off? She asked. Trying to, but Howell's interest... Adrian shook his head. It's designed so you can never catch up. Every payment just barely covers the interest. The principal never goes down. He doesn't want it paid off. He wants people trapped. And if you can't pay, you saw what happens. Eliza sat back. Her mind was racing, trying to find an angle, a solution, anything that didn't end with both of them beaten to death in an alley. How much have you paid so far? She asked. Maybe 300 over 6 months. And you're still at 800? Like I said, interest. That's insane. That's Howell. Eliza stood up, started pacing the small room. It was barely 5 steps from wall to wall, but she needed to move. Needed to think. All right, she said. So we need 800 marks in 3 days. You got any savings? If I had savings, do you think I'd be in this situation? Fair point. Family? Friends? No family left, and friends. Adrian's expression went bitter. Turns out friends disappear when you can't buy the next round. Tell me about it. Eliza chewed her lip. What about the books? Those look valuable. They are. I've already sold half of them. The rest won't get us more than 50 marks. Belongings. I'm wearing them. Fantastic. She stopped pacing, turned to look at him. You got any skills? Anything you can do that pays fast? Adrian met her eyes. I can read. I can write. I can do sums. None of which is worth 800 marks in 3 days. Can you fight? Clearly not. Can you steal? I'm many things, but I'm not a thief. Might want to reconsider that stance given our current situation. No. The word was flat, final. Eliza threw up her hands. Then what exactly do you suggest we do? Ask Howell nicely to forget the debt? I don't know. Adrian's voice rose. Then he winced and pressed a hand to his ribs. I don't have an answer. I've been trying to figure this out for 6 months, and I've got nothing. They stared at each other. Eliza felt exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. What had she been thinking? She couldn't save this man. She couldn't even save herself. She should leave. Right now. Walk out that door and never look back. But she thought about Daniel, about finding him in the river, about the way his hand had looked, pale and bloated, fingers curled like he was reaching for something that wasn't there. She couldn't do it again, couldn't walk away. All right, she said quietly. We've got 3 days. We're going to figure this out. Adrian looked at her like she was crazy. How? I don't know yet, but I'm good at thinking on my feet. She grabbed her coat from the chair. Get some rest. I'll come back tomorrow morning. We'll make a plan. Eliza. She stopped at the door, hand on the latch. Why are you doing this? Adrian asked. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why risk yourself for a stranger? Eliza looked back at him, at this man with his broken ribs and his impossible debt and his 2 blue eyes. Because someone should have done it for my brother, she said, and no one did. She left before he could respond. The next morning, Eliza woke up in her own bed, a sagging mattress in a rented room above Kellerman's tailor shop, and spent 30 seconds hoping the whole thing had been a nightmare. It hadn't. Her knuckles were bruised from where she'd gripped Adrian's coat. Her lips were chapped from that desperate kiss in the alley. And when she looked in the cracked mirror above her wash basin, she saw exhaustion staring back, dark circles under gray eyes, brown hair escaping its braid, skin too pale. She looked like someone who'd made a very stupid decision and was about to pay for it. The problem was, she didn't regret it. She should have. Any sensible person would have. But as she got dressed, patching her stockings, lacing her boots, pinning her hair, all she could think about was Adrian's face when she'd kissed him. That moment of shock, then understanding, then something else. Something that looked almost like hope. She was an idiot. She made it to Grimsby's bookshop by 8, which was a minor miracle considering she'd barely slept. The shop was exactly what you'd expect from a place that had been in business for 40 years. Cramped, dusty, smelling like old paper and older dreams. Books were stacked everywhere, on shelves, on tables, in precarious towers that defied physics. Grimsby himself was already there, sitting behind the counter with his usual cup of tea and a book that was probably older than Eliza. He looked up when she came in and his bushy eyebrows rose. You look like hell, he said. Good morning to you, too. What happened? Nothing. Eliza. She sighed. Grimsby was 73, half blind from a lifetime of reading in bad light, and far too perceptive for his own good. He'd hired her 3 years ago when she'd shown up looking for work with nothing but a sharp tongue and a desperate need for rent money. He'd asked her 3 questions. Can you read? Can you count? Can you keep your mouth shut when customers are being idiots? She'd answered yes to the first 2 and been honest about the third. He'd hired her anyway. Now he studied her over the rim of his teacup, waiting. I did something stupid, Eliza said finally. How stupid? I kissed a stranger to save him from enforcers, claimed him as my husband, and now I'm tied to an 800-mark debt with 3 days to pay it off. Grimsby set down his teacup very carefully. Then he laughed. It started as a chuckle, then built into wheezing, shoulder-shaking laughter that made him grab the counter for support. That, he managed between gasps, is the most Eliza thing I have ever heard. It's not funny. It's a little funny. It's a disaster. It's both. Grimsby wiped his eyes. 800 marks? 800 marks. He whistled low. That's more than most people see in a year. Tell me about it. And you've got 3 days? 3 days? Grimsby was quiet for a moment, his laughter fading. He looked at her with those clouded eyes that somehow still saw too much. This stranger, he said. He worth it? Eliza opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know him well enough to say. Then why are you doing this? Because no one helped my brother. Understanding flickered across Grimsby's face. He'd known Daniel, had let him hide in the shop sometimes when the enforcers were looking for him. He'd been at the funeral, all 6 people who'd bothered to show up. I see, Grimsby said quietly. He reached into the till, pulled out a small leather pouch, and set it on the counter. There's 60 marks in there, he said. It's not much, but I can't take your money. You're not taking it. I'm giving it. He pushed the pouch toward her. You're a good worker, Eliza. Better than good. You're smart, you're honest, and you've got a habit of doing reckless things for the right reasons. If this stranger's worth saving, then save him. If he's not, well, at least you'll know you tried. Eliza's throat tightened. Grimsby, don't get sentimental on me. Just take the money and get to work. Someone's got to mind the shop while you're off being a hero. She took the pouch. It felt heavier than 60 marks. Thank you, she said. Grimsby waved her off. Go on, dust the philosophy section. And Eliza? Yeah? Be careful. Men who owe that kind of money usually have bigger problems than debt and bigger secrets. Eliza met Adrian that evening at a place called the Broken Helm. It was a tavern in the warehouse district, loud, crowded, and anonymous. The kind of place where people minded their own business because they had their own problems to worry about. The floors were sticky with spilled beer, the walls were stained with smoke, and the clientele looked like they'd knife you for looking at them wrong. Perfect. Adrian was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a mug of something dark. He looked better than he had last night. Someone had loaned him a clean shirt, and the worst of the blood was gone. But there was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before, like he was waiting for the next blow. Eliza slid into the seat across from him. You clean up all right, she said. So do you. She ignored the way that made her stomach flip. I got 60 marks. From my boss. It's not much, but it's a start. Adrian's eyebrows rose. He just gave it to you? He's a good man, one of the few left in this city. Apparently. Adrian reached into his coat and pulled out a small stack of coins. He set them on the table between them. 40 marks, he said. I sold some things. What things? Books. A watch. A ring my mother gave me before she died. He said it flatly, like the words didn't matter. They mattered. Eliza could tell from the way his jaw clenched. That's 100 total, she said. We need 700 more. I know. In 2 days. I know. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the tavern roared with conversation and laughter and the clink of glasses. Someone was singing off-key in the corner. Someone else was arguing about a card game. Normal life. Continuing on like the world wasn't ending. There's one option, Adrian said finally. Eliza leaned forward. I'm listening. Howell runs a card game every week, Thursday nights, high stakes, merchants, factory owners, anyone with money to burn. And you want to play? It's the only way to make that kind of money in 2 days. Eliza stared at him. You'd lose everything we have. Or I'd win 800 marks. You're a gambler? No, but I'm desperate. Desperate people make stupid decisions. I'm aware. Adrian met her eyes. You have a better idea? She didn't. She wished she did. But her mind was empty except for a growing sense that this was going to end badly. Have you ever played in one of Howell's games? She asked. No. Do you even know the rules? I know cards. I've played before, just not at this level. Not at this level, Eliza repeated. Fantastic. So you're going to walk into a room full of professional gamblers and what, exactly? Hope you get lucky? Yes. That's insane. You have a better plan? I'm working on it. Work faster. They glared at each other. A barmaid came by, middle-aged, tired-looking, with a stain on her apron that might have been wine or blood. "You two want anything, or are you just here to stare?" "2 ales," Eliza said. The woman left. Adrian rubbed his face. "Look, I know it's a risk, but what choice do we have? We're not going to earn 700 marks in 2 days doing honest work, and I'm not stealing." "Why not?" "Because I'm not a thief." "You keep saying that like it means something." "It means I have some principles left." "Principles don't stop broken ribs." "Neither does theft. It just adds prison to the list of problems." The barmaid returned with 2 mugs of ale that looked watered down. Eliza took a long drink anyway. It tasted like dishwater and regret. "Fine," she said. "The card game. When is it?" "Tomorrow night." "Tomorrow?" Eliza choked on her ale. "That's cutting it close." "It's the only one before the deadline." "And if you lose?" "Then we're in the same position we're in now. Broken dead." Comforting. Adrian took a drink. "I'm not asking you to come. This is my problem. You can walk away." "No, I can't. I claimed you as my husband, remember? Those enforcers saw me. If I walk away now, they'll come after me anyway, for helping you, for lying to them." "Then what do you want to do?" Eliza set down her mug. "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. It's not a negotiation." "Eliza, if you're risking the money we scraped together, I'm there to make sure you don't do anything stupid." "You mean more stupid." "Exactly." Adrian looked like he wanted to argue. His mouth opened, closed. He ran a hand through his hair, dark brown, she noticed, with a slight wave, and sighed. "You're going to get us both killed," he said. "Probably," Eliza agreed, "but at least it'll be interesting." Despite everything, Adrian smiled. Just a little, just enough. And Eliza felt that dangerous warmth in her chest again. They finished their ales, made a plan, or something close to a plan. Adrian would find out the details, where, when, what the buy-in was. Eliza would see if she could scrape together any more money. They'd meet here tomorrow, same time, and go together. It was a terrible plan. It was the only plan they had. When Eliza left the Broken Helm, she felt Adrian's eyes on her back all the way to the door, and she wondered, not for the first time, what exactly she'd gotten herself into. The next day passed in a blur. Eliza worked her shift at the bookshop, smiling at customers and recommending books while her mind churned through possibilities. She went through her room looking for anything to sell, found a silver locket her mother had given her, a pair of earrings she never wore, a coat that was too nice for someone like her anyway. She took it all to a pawnbroker on Cleric Street, got 20 marks for the lot. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. By the time evening came, she was wound so tight she felt like she might snap. She met Adrian at the Broken Helm. He looked just as tense as she felt, freshly shaved, wearing what was probably his only good coat, eyes dark with worry. "You ready?" he asked. "No? You?" "Not even a little." "Good. We're in agreement." The card game was held in the back room of a warehouse near the docks. The building looked abandoned from the outside, broken windows, peeling paint, a sign that read Harwick Imports hanging askew. But inside, through a side door that Adrian knocked on 3 times, it was a different world. The back room was warm, smoky, and full of men who looked like they'd bought and sold lives before breakfast. A long table dominated the center, polished wood, green felt, cards and chips already laid out. Lamps hung from the ceiling, casting everything in golden light. And at the head of the table sat Howell himself. He was older than Eliza had expected, maybe 55, with silver hair slicked back and cold gray eyes that missed nothing. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than Eliza would make in 5 years, and when he smiled, it never reached his eyes. "Adrian Vale," Howell said when they entered. "Didn't expect to see you here, especially not with company." "Mr. Howell," Adrian said. His voice was steady, calm. "I'm here to play." "Are you now?" Howell's gaze slid to Eliza. "And who's this?" "My wife," Adrian said smoothly. Eliza tried not to flinch at the lie becoming habit. Howell's smile widened. "Charming! The one who kissed you in Craven Alley?" "Word travels fast." "It does when it's interesting." Howell gestured to the table. "Buy-in is 100 marks. You have it?" Adrian set the money on the felt, Howell counted it, nodded. Sit. Your wife can watch, but she doesn't play. Understood. They sat. Cards were dealt. And Eliza watched her last hope disappear into smoke and chance. The first hand, Adrian lost 40 marks. Eliza watched the chips slide across the table toward a merchant in a velvet waistcoat, and her stomach dropped. She stood behind Adrian's chair, trying to look like she belonged there, like she wasn't screaming inside. Bad luck, the merchant said, not sounding sympathetic at all. Adrian said nothing. Just watched the next deal with those two calm eyes. Second hand. He folded early. Smart. Third hand. He won. 20 marks. Not enough to recover what he'd lost, but enough to keep breathing. Eliza's nails dug into her palms. The game moved fast. Faster than she'd expected. Cards snapping down, chips moving, men studying each other like wolves deciding which one to eat first. The room smelled like cigar smoke and expensive cologne and something else. Desperation, maybe. The kind that clung to skin. Howell sat at the head of the table, playing with the calm precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He won more than he lost. Not by much. Just enough to keep everyone else hungry. Your husband's quiet, Howell said to Eliza during a pause. Most men talk when they're nervous. He's concentrating, Eliza said. Is he? It wasn't a question. Adrian glanced up at her, just for a second, but she saw it, the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders were locked tight. He was terrified. He was also losing. By the 6th hand, they were down to 60 marks. By the 8th, 40. Eliza couldn't watch anymore. She turned away, staring at the wall, counting the cracks in the plaster. Anything to stop seeing that stack of chips getting smaller. Behind her, she heard Adrian's voice. Steady. Call. Chips hitting the table. Cards flipping. Someone cursed. Eliza turned back. Adrian had won. A big pot, maybe 200 marks. The merchant in the velvet waistcoat looked furious. Beginner's luck. Maybe, Adrian said. But it wasn't luck. Eliza could see it now. The way Adrian watched the other players. The way he tracked their tells, the nervous tap of fingers, the shift in posture, the slight widening of eyes when they had something good. He wasn't just playing cards, he was playing people. The next hour was brutal. Adrian won some, lost some. The stack of chips in front of him went up and down like a ship in a storm. Eliza lost count of how many hands had been played, lost track of time. The room felt airless, the smoke thick enough to choke on. At some point, a man in a dark coat joined the table. Late arrival. He bought in with 500 marks like it was pocket change, and Howell greeted him like an old friend. Brennan, Howell said, good of you to join us. Brennan nodded. He was younger than the others, maybe 35, with sharp features and eyes like chips of ice. He looked at Adrian the way you'd look at an insect. Who's this? Brennan asked. Adrian Vale, and his lovely wife. Vale, Brennan's mouth twisted. You related to Marcus Vale? Adrian went very still. He was my brother. Was? He's dead. It was the first time Adrian had said it out loud. Eliza felt the words hit the air like stones. Brennan smiled. Shame. He owed me money, too. Get in line, Howell said. The table laughed. Adrian didn't. The game continued. And something in Adrian changed. He started playing differently. Aggressive. Reckless. Pushing all in on hands that made Eliza's heart stop. He won 3 in a row, big pots that brought his stack up to 400 marks. Then 500. Then 6. Eliza could barely breathe. Your husband's on a streak, Howell observed. Looks like it, Eliza said. Streaks end. So does luck. Howell smiled. True. The next hand, Adrian went all in. 600 marks. Everything. Eliza's vision tunneled. The other players folded one by one until it was just Adrian and Brennan. Brennan studied his cards, studied Adrian, then pushed his own chips forward. Call. Adrian flipped his cards. Pair of kings. Brennan flipped his. Pair of aces. The room went silent. Eliza felt the floor drop out from under her. Then the dealer laid out the community cards. King on the river. 3 of a kind. Adrian won. The room erupted. Men shouting, some laughing, Brennan throwing his cards down hard enough to make them bounce. Howell leaned back in his chair, watching Adrian with new interest. Adrian sat frozen, staring at the chips being pushed toward him. 1,200 marks. More than enough. Eliza wanted to grab him and run, wanted to take the money and never look back. But Adrian didn't move. Another hand, he said. Eliza's blood turned to ice. Adrian, one more. No. She put her hand on his shoulder. We have enough. Let's go. He looked up at her. Those blue eyes were different now, harder, hungry. I can win more, he said. We don't need more. I need to win it all back. Everything my brother lost, everything they took. Adrian, but he'd already pushed half the chips forward. Eliza wanted to scream, wanted to shake him, but she couldn't. Not here, not in front of these men who'd smell weakness like blood. So she stood there and watched. The hand played out in agonizing slow motion. Adrian lost. 600 marks. Gone. He had 600 left. Exactly what they needed. Cash out, Eliza said quietly. Please. For a moment, she thought he'd listen. Then Brennan spoke. What's wrong, Vale? Getting cold feet? Adrian's jaw clenched. Your brother never knew when to quit either, Brennan continued. That's how he ended up in the river. The words dropped like a bomb. Eliza's hand tightened on Adrian's shoulder. She felt him go rigid beneath her fingers. What did you say? Adrian's voice was very quiet. You heard me. My brother disappeared. Is that what you think? Brennan laughed. He didn't disappear. He ran. Tried to skip town without paying his debts. We found him 3 days later. He fought. Lost. And then, well, Ashford River's deep. Howell sighed. Brennan. What? The boy should know. His brother died because he was stupid. And from what I've seen tonight, stupidity runs in the family. Adrian stood up so fast his chair fell over. The room went quiet. Every man there was watching, waiting, the kind of attention that came before violence. Sit down, Howell said. It wasn't a suggestion. Adrian didn't sit. Eliza could see it happening, could see him making the decision that would get them both killed. She stepped between him and Brennan. We're leaving, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. We came to win money. We won. We're done. Your husband doesn't look done, Brennan said. He is. Let him speak for himself. Eliza turned to Adrian, put her hand on his chest, felt his heart hammering beneath her palm. Look at me, she said quietly. His eyes were wild, unfocused. Adrian, look at me. He did. We won, she said. We have the money. We can pay Howell and be done with this. But only if we leave, right now. He killed Marcus. Maybe. And if he did, you can't fix it by getting yourself killed, too. He deserves... I know. Her voice cracked. I know what he deserves. But not here. Not now. We survive first. Then we figure out the rest. She saw the war happening behind his eyes. Rage versus reason. Grief versus survival. Finally, something in him broke. His shoulders sagged. All right, he said. All right. Eliza turned back to the table. We're cashing out. Howell nodded slowly. Very wise, Mrs. Vale. He gestured to one of his men, who counted out 600 marks and handed it to Adrian. The weight of it seemed to bring Adrian back to himself. He took the money, shoved it in his coat, and turned toward the door. Vale. Adrian stopped. Howell was watching him with something that might have been respect or pity, hard to tell. Your brother made a lot of mistakes, Howell said. But running wasn't one of them. He was trying to protect someone. Probably you. Remember that before you do something stupid. Adrian said nothing. They left. Outside, the night air hit Eliza like a slap, cold and sharp and real. She sucked in a breath, then another, trying to stop her hands from shaking. Adrian walked 10 paces, then stopped, leaned against the warehouse wall, put his head in his hands. He killed him, Adrian said, voice muffled. Brennan killed Marcus. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He looked up. His eyes were wet. I've been telling myself Marcus disappeared, that maybe he made it out, started over somewhere. But I knew. I've always known. Eliza didn't know what to say, So she just stood there while Adrian fell apart. He was trying to protect me, Adrian said. That's why he ran. He thought if he was gone, they'd forget about the debt. Let me alone. And instead His voice broke. He died thinking I'd be safe. Adrian, I should have looked harder, should have found him before. You couldn't have known. I should have. He slammed his fist against the wall. Once, twice. Eliza grabbed his arm before he could do it again. Stop, she said. You're going to break your hand. I don't care. Well, I do. We still have to pay Howell, remember? Can't do that if you're bleeding all over the money. It was a terrible joke, but it worked. Adrian stopped, looked at her, almost smiled. You're very practical, he said. Someone has to be. You're clearly terrible at it. This time he did smile, small and broken, but real. They started walking, away from the docks, away from the warehouse, into the maze of streets that made up Ashford's industrial heart. Neither of them spoke, just walked side by side, the money heavy in Adrian's coat, the night cold around them. Finally, Adrian broke the silence. Thank you, he said, for stopping me back there. I would have done something stupid. I noticed. And for everything else. I know this isn't your problem. You didn't have to help. I kissed you in front of 3 armed men, Eliza said. I think we're past not my problem. Still, they turned onto a wider street. Gas lamps flickered overhead. A few people passed, workers heading to night shifts, a woman with a basket, a man walking a thin dog. Normal life, continuing. What are you going to do? Eliza asked. About Brennan. I don't know. You could go to the authorities. Adrian laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. The authorities work for people like Howell. You think they care about a dead debtor? Then what? I don't know, Adrian said again. But I can't let it go. I can't just... Marcus deserves better. Eliza understood. She'd felt the same way about Daniel. Still did, 3 years later. But understanding didn't make it easier. First we pay Howell, she said. Clear the debt. Make sure we're both safe. Then you can figure out what to do about Marcus. Practical again. It's my best quality. They walked in silence for another block. Then Adrian stopped. I lied to you, he said. Eliza's stomach dropped. About what? About who I am. Here it was, the other shoe dropping. The secret she'd known was there. All right, she said carefully. So, who are you? Adrian took a breath. My name is Adrian Vale. That part's true. But the rest... He ran a hand through his hair. I'm not a tutor. I mean, I was. For a while, but that's not... I'm not from here. From where then? Elsewhere. He looked at her. I came to Ashford 3 months ago, after Marcus disappeared. I was trying to find out what happened to him. And I found out he owed money. A lot of money. To a lot of people. Howell was just one of them. So I started paying off what I could, taking the debts on myself, hoping someone would slip. Tell me what really happened. Eliza processed this. Why the tutoring story? Because the truth is complicated. Try me. Adrian hesitated. She could see him weighing it, trust versus secrecy. Whatever he was about to say, it mattered. My family has money, he said finally. Not Howell money. But enough. I could have paid off Marcus's debts 10 times over. But I didn't want to. I wanted to know who did this to him, who drove him to borrow from people like Howell, and I couldn't do that as who I really am. Who are you really? Someone whose name opens doors and closes mouths. Eliza stared at him. Your nobility. No, not exactly. My father owns land, factories. He's connected to people who matter. And if I'd shown up asking questions with my real name, everyone would have lied, been polite, told me nothing. So you pretended to be poor. I pretended to be nobody. Eliza didn't know whether to laugh or hit him. You let them beat you half to death when you could have stopped it with a word. If I'd stopped it, I never would have found out about Brennan. You also nearly died. But I didn't, because you saved me. He was looking at her like she'd done something heroic instead of monumentally stupid. I'm still angry, Eliza said. I know. You lied. I know. And I kissed a rich boy pretending to be poor. That's humiliating. I'm sorry. Eliza turned away, looked at the street, the lamps, the shadows. Anywhere but at him. Her mind was racing. Adrian wasn't who she thought. He had resources, power. He could have walked away from this mess at any time. But he hadn't. He'd stayed. Paid debts that weren't his. Nearly gotten killed looking for answers. And he'd let her help him, let her risk herself, even knowing she had nothing to gain. Why didn't you tell me before? She asked. Because people treat you differently when they know you have money. They either want something or they hate you for having what they don't. And you thought I'd hate you. I thought you'd leave. Eliza turned back to him. I might have. I know. I still might. I know that too. They looked at each other. The street was empty now, just the two of them and the lamplight and the cold. What happens after we pay Howell? Eliza asked. I don't know. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Adrian stepped closer. I came here looking for answers. I found them. Now I have to decide what to do with them. And I don't know what that looks like. You could go home. Back to your real life. I could. Will you? He didn't answer right away, just looked at her with those impossible blue eyes. What about you? He asked. What happens to you after this? I go back to the bookshop. Keep working. Keep surviving. Same as always. That's all? That's all there is. Adrian reached out, slowly, gave her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. His fingers were warm despite the cold. Steady. Come with me, he said. Eliza's heart stopped. What? When I leave Ashford, come with me. You're insane. Probably, but I mean it. His grip tightened. You're sharp. Quick. You saved my life and then saved it again when I was about to throw it away back there. You could do anything, be anything. You don't have to stay here. I can't just leave. Why not? Because I have a job, a room, a life. Is it a life you want? The question hit harder than it should have. Eliza pulled her hand back. You don't know me. I know you're brave and reckless, and you don't give up. That's more than most people. That's not enough to uproot everything. Isn't it? Eliza wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he was crazy and she barely knew him and this was all happening too fast. But part of her, the part that had kissed a stranger in an alley, that had gambled their last hope on cards, that had always wanted something more than Ashford's smoke and despair, that part whispered yes. I need to think, she said. All right. And we need to pay Howell. That's still the priority. Agreed. They started walking again. This time, Eliza was hyper-aware of the space between them, the way Adrian's shoulder nearly brushed hers, the way she could hear his breathing. When do we pay him? She asked. Tomorrow. Deadline's midnight, but the sooner the better. Where? Guildhouse, Carpenter Street. I know it. Of course she did. Everyone in Ashford knew the Guildhouse, big stone building with iron gates and men who looked like they ate children for breakfast. You don't have to come, Adrian said. We've been over this. It could be dangerous. Everything about this has been dangerous. Adrian almost smiled. Fair point. They walked until they reached the corner where their paths split. Adrian toward his boarding house, Eliza toward her room above the tailor's. Tomorrow, Adrian said. Noon. Meet me at the Broken Helm. Noon, Eliza agreed. She turned to go. Eliza. She stopped. Think about what I said. About leaving. You don't have to answer now. Just think about it. She nodded. Couldn't trust her voice. Then she walked away before she could do something stupid like say yes. That night, Eliza lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Her mind wouldn't stop. Adrian wasn't who she thought. He was rich, connected. He could have fixed this mess with money and walked away clean, but he hadn't. He'd stayed in the dirt with her, let her save him, let her matter. And now he was offering her a way out of Ashford, out of the bookshop and the endless gray sameness of her life. It was insane. It was impossible. It was everything she'd ever wanted and never let herself imagine. She thought about Daniel, about how he died trying to escape, how she'd promised herself she'd never be that desperate, never take that kind of risk. But wasn't staying a risk too? Wasn't wasting her life in this city a kind of death? She didn't sleep. When morning came, pale and cold through her window, Eliza got up and made a decision. She didn't know if it was the right one, but it was hers. At noon, she met Adrian at the Broken Helm. He was waiting outside, the money in a leather satchel, looking nervous. "Ready?" he asked. "No. You?" "Not even a little." They walked to Carpenter Street together. The guild house loomed ahead, stone and iron and the weight of every debt in Ashford. Men in black coats stood at the gate. They recognized Adrian immediately. "Mr. Howell's expecting you," one said. They were led inside, through a courtyard, up steps, into a room that smelled like leather and old money. Howell sat behind a massive desk, writing something in a ledger. He didn't look up when they entered. "Adrian Vale," he said, "and Mrs. Vale. Right on time." "We're here to settle the debt," Adrian said. "So I see." Adrian set the satchel on the desk. Howell opened it, counted the money with quick, precise movements. 800 marks, Howell said, plus 50 for the inconvenience of having my men make extra trips. Adrian's jaw clenched. "That wasn't the agreement. It is now. We don't have 50 more." "Then we have a problem." Eliza's mind raced. They'd spent 40 marks getting here. Food, transportation, bribes to get information. They had maybe 10 left. Not enough. "We'll get it," Eliza said. "Give us one more day." "I'm afraid not." Howell closed the ledger. "But I have an alternative." "What alternative?" Howell looked at Adrian. "I need someone with your particular skills, someone who can move in circles I can't, who can ask questions without raising suspicion. Work for me for 3 months and the debt is cleared. All of it." "What kind of work?" "Information gathering. Nothing violent, nothing illegal. Just listening, reporting back." It was a trap. Eliza could feel it. Once Adrian agreed, Howell would own him. 3 months would become 6. 6 would become forever. "No," she said. Both men looked at her. "We'll get the 50 marks," Eliza continued, "but we're not trading one debt for another." Howell smiled. "Spirited. I like that. But the offer stands. 3 months, or 50 marks by tonight." "We'll have it by tonight." "Then we're done here." They left. Outside, Adrian turned to her. "How are we going to get 50 marks by tonight?" Eliza took a breath. "I have an idea," she said. "But you're going to hate it." Adrian stared at her. "What idea?" Eliza took a breath. "We go to your family." The silence that followed was deafening. "Absolutely not," Adrian said. "You said they have money." "I said no." 50 marks is nothing to them. Eliza. His voice was sharp enough to cut. "I left for a reason. I'm not going back." They were standing on Carpenter Street, people flowing around them like water around stones. Eliza pulled him into an alley. Not craven, but close enough to make her stomach twist. "Then what?" she asked. "We can't earn 50 marks in 6 hours. We can't steal it. You won't work for Howell. So what exactly do you suggest?" Adrian ran both hands through his hair. He looked cornered, desperate. "There has to be another way," he said. "There isn't." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. And so do you. You're just too stubborn to admit it." He turned away from her, shoulders tight. She could see the war happening inside him, pride versus necessity, anger versus logic. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "My family, they're not good people, Eliza. My father, he's part of the reason places like the Guild exist. He profits from suffering, from people like you. People like me. You know what I mean." "Do I?" Adrian turned back. "He owns 3 factories in Ashford. He sets the wages, the hours. He's the reason children work 16-hour shifts for pennies. The reason men die in machines because safety costs money. He doesn't care who suffers as long as his ledgers balance." Eliza felt something cold settle in her chest. "And you come from that?" "Yes." "You benefit from it." "I did, until I couldn't stomach it anymore." "How noble." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Adrian flinched. "That's not fair," he said. "Isn't it?" Eliza stepped closer. "You get to walk away. Leave when your conscience bothers you. Meanwhile, people like me, people like your brother, we don't get that choice. We live with the consequences while you play at being poor." "I wasn't playing." Yes, you were. You were slumming. And now when things get hard, you won't even ask your family for help. Because what? Pride? Principles? She laughed, bitter. We're about to get killed over 50 marks, Adrian. This isn't the time for principles. Adrian's jaw clenched. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking you to survive. At what cost? Whatever it takes. They glared at each other. The alley smelled like rot and old rain. Someone was shouting in the distance, life continuing, indifferent to their crisis. Finally, Adrian looked away. If we do this, he said slowly, if we go to my father, you need to understand something. He won't just give us the money, he'll want something in return, and whatever he wants will be worse than anything Howell could ask for. We'll deal with it. You say that now. I say it because I mean it. We pay Howell tonight or we die. Everything else is a problem for tomorrow. Adrian closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked years older. All right, he said. We'll go. But don't say I didn't warn you. The Vale estate was 2 hours outside Ashford by coach. They took the afternoon line, a rattling thing pulled by horses that looked half dead. The other passengers were servants, mostly, heading back to the big houses after market runs. They gave Adrian and Eliza curious looks but didn't ask questions. Eliza watched the city fall away through the window, factories giving way to fields, smoke giving way to sky. She'd never been this far from Ashford, never had a reason to leave. The countryside was different than she'd imagined. Greener, quieter, almost beautiful, if you could forget what made it possible. Tell me about your father, she said. Adrian was sitting across from her, staring at nothing. What do you want to know? What he's like. Controlling, ambitious, smart enough to be dangerous. Does he know about Marcus? I sent word when Marcus died. He sent back a note saying he was sorry for my loss and that I should return home to grieve properly. Adrian's mouth twisted. Like grief is something you schedule. Did you go? No? He must have been angry. He's always angry. It's his default state. The coach hit a rut. Eliza grabbed the window frame to steady herself. What about your mother? She asked. Dead. 10 years now. Fever. I'm sorry. Adrian shrugged. It was a long time ago. But the way he said it suggested it wasn't long enough. They rode in silence for a while. The landscape got lusher, bigger. Then the estate started appearing, massive houses set back from the road, surrounded by walls and gates and carefully manicured grounds. The Vale estate was the largest one yet. The coach stopped at iron gates that must have been 15 feet tall. A man in livery approached, older, stern-faced, with the bearing of someone who'd spent his life keeping people out. State your business, he said. Adrian leaned out the window. Tell Lord Vale his son has returned. The man's eyes widened. Master Adrian? Hello, Morrison. Sir, we weren't expecting... Should I send word ahead? No need. We'll walk up. Morrison looked doubtful but opened the gates. The coach rolled through, up a drive lined with trees that must have been 100 years old. The house appeared gradually, stone and glass, 3 stories, with columns that belonged in a museum. Eliza felt very, very small. This is where you grew up? She asked. Unfortunately. It's obscene? I was going to say big. Same thing. The coach stopped at the front steps. A woman in a black dress appeared, housekeeper probably, from the ring of keys at her waist. Master Adrian, she said, smiling. What a wonderful surprise. Your father will be so pleased. Will he? Of course. Come in, come in. And your... She looked at Eliza with polite confusion. My wife, Adrian said. Eliza. The lie was getting easier. That worried Eliza more than she wanted to admit. The housekeeper's smile didn't waver. How lovely. Please, this way. They followed her inside. The entrance hall was larger than Eliza's entire room. Marble floors, paintings that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. A chandelier that looked like frozen starlight. Eliza had never felt more out of place. I'll let Lord Vale know you're here, the housekeeper said. Please wait in the drawing room. She led them to a room with furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. Then she left. Adrian stood at the window, hands in his pockets. Eliza tried not to touch anything. How are you so calm? She asked. I'm not. You look calm. Years of practice. Footsteps in the hall. Heavy, deliberate. The door opened. The man who entered looked like an older, harder version of Adrian. Same sharp features, same blue eyes. But where Adrian's face held warmth, even when he was angry, this man's held nothing but cold calculation. Lord Vale studied them for a long moment. "Adrian," he said finally, "you look terrible." "Good to see you too, Father." "And this is?" "Eliza Harrow, my wife." Lord Vale's eyebrows rose a fraction. "Your wife? How sudden. I wasn't aware you were courting anyone. It happened quickly." "Apparently." Lord Vale turned his attention to Eliza. She felt like an insect under glass. "Miss Harrow, or should I say Mrs. Vale?" "Eliza is fine," she managed. "Eliza, what a charming accent. Ashford, I presume?" "Yes, sir." "And what does your family do?" "My family's dead." The bluntness seemed to amuse him. "I see. Well, that's unfortunate." Adrian stepped forward. "We're not here for pleasantries." "No?" Lord Vale sat in a chair that might have been a throne. "Then what are you here for? You've been gone 3 months. No letters, no word. Your brother dies, and you don't even attend the memorial I arranged. Now you show up unannounced with a wife I've never heard of. Forgive me if I'm curious about your intentions." "I need money." Silence. Lord Vale leaned back. "How much?" 50 marks. 50. He laughed. "You interrupt my afternoon for 50 marks? It's urgent." "I'm sure it is. Tell me why." Adrian hesitated. Eliza could see him weighing how much to reveal. "I'm settling Marcus's debts," Adrian said finally. Lord Vale's expression hardened. "Marcus's debts are not your responsibility." "They became my responsibility when he died. He made his choices. You're not obligated to clean up his mistakes." "He was my brother. He was reckless and foolish. He borrowed money from criminals to pay for medical treatment that was always going to fail. I told him not to. He ignored me. And now he's dead." Lord Vale stood. "I'm not giving you money to throw away on his stupidity." Adrian's hands clenched into fists. "It's not throwing away." "It is. You're enabling the very system that killed him. The creditors' guild, the loan sharks, the entire corrupt enterprise that preys on the desperate. You think paying them helps? It doesn't. It just proves the system works." "Then help me destroy it." "Why would I do that?" The question hung in the air. Eliza felt sick. She looked at Lord Vale and saw exactly what Adrian had warned her about. A man who saw people as numbers, problems as opportunities. "Because it's the right thing to do," Adrian said. Lord Vale smiled. "The right thing." "Adrian, when will you learn? Right and wrong are luxuries for people without power. We have responsibilities, obligations. The factories I own employ 3,000 people. If I suddenly grew a conscience and raised wages, improved conditions, the way you've been begging me to for years, do you know what would happen? People would suffer less. My competitors would undercut me. I'd lose contracts. The factories would close. And those 3,000 people would starve. Is that better? That's reality." Lord Vale walked to the window. "You think you're different from me. Better. But you're not. You're just younger, more naive. Give it time. You'll see." Eliza couldn't stay quiet anymore. "He is different," she said. Both men turned to look at her. "He's different because he didn't walk away from Marcus's mess," Eliza continued. "He took it on, tried to fix it. That's not naivety. That's courage." Lord Vale studied her with new interest. "You have opinions." "I have eyes." "And a mouth, apparently. Tell me, Mrs. Vale, if that's truly what you are, what do you see when you look at my son?" Eliza met his gaze. "Someone better than you." The room went very quiet. Then Lord Vale laughed. Actually laughed. "I like her," he said to Adrian. "Where did you find her?" "None of your business. Everything about you is my business. You're my son, my heir, whether you like it or not. I don't want what you want is irrelevant. The estate, the factories, the title. They're all yours eventually. Running away to play detective in Ashford doesn't change that." Adrian's voice was tight. "I'm not coming back. We'll see. Lord Vale returned to his chair. But if you want money from me, we're going to negotiate. I'm listening. 50 marks. In exchange, you come home. Resume your duties. Stop this ridiculous investigation into Marcus's death. No. Then no money. Adrian looked like he'd been struck. You'd let us die over 50 marks? I'd let you learn a lesson. There are consequences to defying me. I've been patient, indulgent even. But my patience has limits. Eliza felt rage building in her chest. This man, this cold, calculating bastard, was going to let his own son die out of spite. What about me? She asked. Lord Vale raised an eyebrow. What about you? You said everything about Adrian is your business. That includes me now, doesn't it? I'm family. Allegedly. We're married. So you claim. I've seen no documentation, no witnesses, nothing that would hold up legally. We can get documentation. Can you? Lord Vale smiled. Here's what I think happened. My son, in his infinite wisdom, got himself into trouble in Ashford. Debts, most likely. And you, clever girl that you are, saw an opportunity. Claimed him as your husband to save him from immediate danger. Now you're here, hoping to cash in. That's not, isn't it? Tell me honestly. Did you marry my son, or are you playing a role? Eliza opened her mouth, closed it. Because he was right. They weren't married, hadn't even discussed it beyond the lie. She'd kissed Adrian to save him and kept lying to keep them both alive. That's what I thought, Lord Vale said. It doesn't matter, Adrian said. Married or not, she's with me, and I'm not leaving her. How touching. I mean it. I'm sure you do. Young love is very passionate, also very temporary. Lord Vale stood again. Here's my final offer, 50 marks, but Eliza stays here. Adrian went very still. What? You heard me. You want the money? You leave her as collateral. Insurance that you'll come back. You can't be serious. I'm always serious. Eliza's mind was reeling. He wanted to keep her, like property. No, Adrian said flatly. Then enjoy your debt. You'd kidnap her. Kidnap is such an ugly word. I prefer house guest. She'd be treated well. Comfortable rooms, good food, all the books she could want. I understand she works in a bookshop. She'd have access to a library that would make your Mr. Grimsby weep. He'd been investigating, checking up on Adrian, on her. Eliza felt violated. The answer is no, Adrian said. We're leaving. He turned toward the door. Brennan killed Marcus, Lord Vale said. Adrian froze. You didn't know I knew, Lord Vale continued. But I do. I know everything that happens in Ashford. It's my city, after all. My factories, my workers, my guild. Adrian turned back slowly. Your guild? I'm a silent partner. Howell runs the day-to-day, but the organization is mine. Has been for 15 years. The room spun. Eliza felt like she'd been punched. Adrian's father owned the Creditors Guild, the organization that had killed Marcus. That was trying to kill them. You knew, Adrian said. His voice was hollow. You knew what happened to Marcus, and you did nothing. I did what was necessary. Marcus borrowed money he couldn't repay. He tried to run. Brennan handled it, cleanly, I might add. The river made sure there were no awkward questions. He was your son. He was a disappointment. As are you, currently. But unlike Marcus, you still have time to correct course. Adrian looked like he might be sick. Eliza felt the same way. Here's the truth, Lord Vale said. You owe Howell 850 marks. I could forgive that debt with a word, send a message, have it erased. But I won't. Not unless you agree to my terms. Your terms are insane. My terms are generous. Eliza stays here for 1 month. You return home, resume your responsibilities, stop this nonsense about avenging Marcus. After 30 days, she goes free. The debt is cleared. Everyone lives. And if I refuse, then you have 6 hours to find 50 marks, which we both know you won't. And when you fail, Howell's men will come. They'll break your legs, maybe worse. And Eliza, well, she made herself part of this. She'll suffer too. He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather. Adrian looked at Eliza. She saw the question in his eyes. What do we do? Eliza's mind raced. They could run, try to disappear. But Lord Vale controlled Ashford. He'd find them. They could fight. But fight what? Money? Power? The entire system? Or they could agree. Split up. She'd stay here while Adrian went home. 1 month. 30 days. It was blackmail. Manipulation. Everything she hated. But they'd be alive. I need to talk to her alone, Adrian said. Lord Vale gestured magnanimously. Of course. Take your time. I'll have tea sent to the library. He left. The moment the door closed, Adrian turned to her. We're not doing this, he said. We might not have a choice. There's always a choice. Is there? Eliza sat down. Her legs felt weak. He owns everything, Adrian. The guild, the debt, Ashford itself. Even if we run, where do we go? How do we survive? I don't know, but I won't leave you here with him. It's 1 month. You don't know what he's capable of. I can guess. Adrian knelt in front of her, took her hands. Eliza, listen to me. If we do this, if I leave you here, I might not get you back. He'll find a way to keep you, to use you against me. That's what he does. He finds what matters and he twists it until you break. Then we break him first. How? Eliza looked at their joined hands. Adrian's were shaking, hers were steady. An idea was forming. Dangerous. Maybe impossible, but possible. We use his own system against him, she said. What? He wants you home, wants you to stop investigating. Why? Because you're getting close to something he doesn't want found. I'm not getting close to anything. Marcus is dead. Brennan admitted it. That's the end. Is it? Eliza leaned forward. Think about it. Your father owns the guild. He knew what Brennan did, but he's not worried about that. He's worried about you asking questions. Why? What else is there? Adrian's eyes widened. You think there's more? I think men like your father don't get nervous unless there's something to hide, and whatever it is, it's bigger than one dead debtor. So what are you suggesting? I stay here. Play the dutiful daughter-in-law. Get close to him. Find out what he's hiding. Meanwhile, you go to Ashford. Pay off Howell with the money your father gives us. Then dig deeper. Find the real secret. That's insane. That's the only play we have. Adrian stood up, started pacing. You'd be alone here. With him. If something goes wrong, I can handle myself. Eliza, I saved you once, remember? In an alley, against 3 armed men. You think I can't handle one old man in a fancy house? He's not just an old man. He's dangerous. So am I. They looked at each other. Eliza saw the moment Adrian made his decision, saw him choose trust over fear. 1 month, he said, or 30 days. If I'm not back by then, you will be. But if I'm not, you run. Don't wait. Don't negotiate. Just run. All right. Promise me. I promise. It was a lie. They both knew it. But lies were all they had left. Adrian pulled her to her feet. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Actually kiss her, not the desperate survival kiss from the alley. But he didn't. He just held her hands and looked at her like he was memorizing her face. I'll fix this, he said. I'll find out what he's hiding and I'll burn it all down. The guild, the system, everything, and then I'll come back for you. I know. And when this is over, when we're both safe, I'm going to ask you properly. Ask me what? To leave with me. To actually leave. Not as my wife, not as part of some lie. Just as you. If you'll have me. Eliza's throat tightened. 1 crisis at a time. Right. 1 crisis at a time. They went back to the drawing room. Lord Vale was waiting with tea and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Have we reached an agreement? He asked. Yes, Adrian said. Eliza stays for 1 month. You clear the debt. I come home. Wonderful. Lord Vale poured tea like they'd just negotiated a business deal, which Eliza supposed they had. I'll send word to Howell tonight. The debt will be forgiven. Adrian, your old room is prepared. Eliza, the guest wing has a lovely suite overlooking the gardens. I think you'll be comfortable. I'm sure I will, Eliza said. Lord Vale smiled. I do enjoy clever women. They're so much more interesting than the usual vapid creatures my peers marry off their sons to. This month should be quite entertaining." Adrian looked like he might say something. Eliza caught his eye, shook her head slightly. "Not yet. Not now." He understood. "I should go," Adrian said. "The coach back to Ashford leaves in an hour. I'll have Morrison drive you, much faster." "That's not necessary." "I insist." It wasn't a suggestion. Adrian turned to Eliza. They stood there awkwardly, both of them aware of Lord Vale watching. "1 month," Adrian said. 30 days. He kissed her forehead, quick, gentle. Then he left before she could see his face. Eliza stood alone in the drawing room with Lord Vale. He sipped his tea. "You're not really married, are you?" he asked. Eliza met his eyes. "Does it matter?" "Not particularly, but I appreciate honesty." "Then no, we're not." "I thought so. The way you look at each other, it's not familiarity, it's fascination, still learning each other, still deciding if the other person is worth the risk." "You're very observant." "I'm very successful, same thing." He set down his cup. "Let me be clear about something, Eliza. You're here because you're useful, a lever to control my son, nothing more. But that doesn't mean we can't be civil, civilized even. Civilized. You'll have freedom within the estate, access to the library, the grounds, meals with the family. I won't lock you in a tower like some gothic heroine, but if you try to leave, if you contact Adrian, if you interfere in any way, the deal is off. Understood?" "Understood." "Good." He stood. "Dinner is at 8. Dress appropriately. I'll have something sent to your room." He left. Eliza sat alone in the too expensive furniture and started planning how to destroy him. The guest suite was 3 times the size of Eliza's room in Ashford. High ceilings, windows that actually closed, a bed with sheets that didn't smell like mildew. A wardrobe already filled with dresses in her size. Lord Vale worked fast. Eliza stood in the center of it all and felt like she was being buried alive. She'd told Adrian she could handle this. Handle herself. Handle Lord Vale. Now, alone in this gilded cage, she wondered if she'd lied. A knock at the door. The housekeeper from earlier, Mrs. Henshaw, she'd said her name was, entered with an armful of fabric. "For dinner, miss," she said. "His lordship thought the blue would suit you." The dress was beautiful. Probably cost more than Eliza made in 6 months. She hated it immediately. "I'll manage on my own," Eliza said. "Are you certain? The buttons?" "I'm certain." Mrs. Henshaw set the dress on the bed and left with a look that suggested she knew exactly what Eliza was. An interloper, a pretender, someone who didn't belong. She wasn't wrong. Eliza changed into the dress. It fit perfectly, which was somehow worse than if it hadn't. She looked at herself in the mirror. Brown hair she'd tried to tame, gray eyes that looked too tired, wearing clothes that cost more than everything she'd ever owned combined. She looked like someone else. Good. That's what she needed to be. Dinner was in a room larger than Grimsby's entire bookshop. Long table, enough chairs for 20, candles everywhere. Lord Vale sat at the head, already eating what looked like roasted pheasant. He didn't look up when Eliza entered. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair halfway down the table, too far for easy conversation, close enough to be watched. Eliza sat. A servant appeared, young man, barely 20, and placed food in front of her. More food than she'd seen in a week. Her stomach growled despite herself. "Eat," Lord Vale said. "You look half-starved." "I'm fine." "You're lying, but I appreciate the effort." He cut into his pheasant with surgical precision. "Tell me about yourself, Eliza. Where did you grow up?" "Ashford." "Obviously. But where in Ashford? What did your parents do?" Eliza took a bite of something that might have been duck. It tasted like ashes. "My father worked the factories. Yours, probably. He died when I was 12. Accident with a press machine." Lord Vale paused, just for a second. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Are you?" "No, but it's what one says." At least he was honest about being heartless. "And your mother?" he asked. "Fever. 2 years later. I've been on my own since 14. Yet you learned to read, to work in a bookshop. Most factory children don't get that opportunity. Most factory children don't have a brother who stole books." "Ah, the brother who died in the river." Eliza's hand tightened on her fork. You know about Daniel? I know about everyone in Ashford who causes problems. Daniel Harrow, caught stealing from the guild office 3 years ago, tried to expose wage theft, ended up dead. Lord Vale sipped his wine. Tragic. Also predictable. People who challenge the system rarely prosper. People who run the system rarely have souls. True. But we sleep well at night. Eliza wanted to throw the fork at his face. Instead, she took another bite of duck. You remind me of someone, Lord Vale said. Who? Adrian's mother. She had the same fire, the same refusal to bend. He smiled, cold and sharp. It killed her eventually. Not the fever, that was just the mechanism. It was the anger, the constant fighting. She burned herself out trying to fix things that couldn't be fixed. Maybe she just needed better tools, or better goals. He set down his glass. Here's what I think, Eliza. You're here because you care about my son. Maybe not love, too soon for that, but something close. Loyalty, perhaps. And you think if you stay here, play nice, you can protect him. And you're wrong. The best way to protect Adrian is to let him come home, resume his life, stop chasing ghosts. Marcus is dead. The circumstances are unfortunate but irrelevant. Pursuing them won't bring him back. It will only get Adrian killed. Unless there's more to find. Lord Vale's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. What do you mean? I mean you're nervous. About something. You want Adrian home and quiet. Why? What are you afraid he'll discover? I'm not afraid of anything. Everyone's afraid of something. They stared at each other across the long table, candles guttering, the room feeling smaller despite its size. Finally, Lord Vale stood. You're more interesting than I expected, he said, but also more dangerous. I'll need to watch you carefully. Watch all you want. I'm not going anywhere. No, you're not. He walked toward the door, then paused. One piece of advice, Eliza. Don't mistake my civility for weakness. I've built an empire on knowing when to be ruthless. If you become a problem, if you interfere with my plans for Adrian, I will remove you. Permanently. Are we clear? Crystal. He left. Eliza sat alone in the dining room, surrounded by more food than she could eat, wearing a dress that cost more than her father's life. And she smiled, because Lord Vale had just confirmed what she'd suspected. There was something else, something bigger than Marcus's death, something worth killing to protect. She just had to find it. The next 3 days, Eliza played the perfect guest. She ate breakfast in her room, read in the library, which was, as Lord Vale had promised, extraordinary, walked the grounds with Mrs. Henshaw as escort, smiled at servants, asked no questions. She was learning the house, the rhythms, who went where and when. Lord Vale left every morning at 9, returned around 6. The study on the second floor was always locked when he was gone. The servants avoided it entirely. Eliza started there. The fourth night, when the house was quiet and the servants had retired, she crept down the hallway to the study door. Locked, as expected. But she'd grown up in Ashford. She knew how to pick a lock with a hairpin and patience. It took 15 minutes. Her hands were shaking by the time the lock clicked. Inside, the study was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, a desk that probably cost more than a house. Papers everywhere. Ledgers, contracts, correspondence. Eliza lit a single candle and started reading. Most of it was boring. Factory reports, production numbers, letters from business partners discussing steel prices and coal shipments. But then she found the ledger. It was smaller than the others. Hidden in a locked drawer she'd had to force open with a letter opener. The pages were filled with numbers, dates, amounts, initials. No names, just initials. But Eliza recognized the pattern. She'd seen it before. In the Creditors Guild records Daniel had stolen. This was a payment ledger, money going out, to people identified only by letters. BR, 500 marks. Monthly. JK, 300 marks. Quarterly. TW, 1,000 marks. Annually. Page after page of payments, thousands of marks, maybe tens of thousands. Eliza's mind raced. Bribes? Payoffs? But to whom? She kept reading. Near the back, she found a section labeled Ashford Operations, and there, buried in a list of expenditures, she saw it. Marcus Vale took 2,000 marks, paid 6 months before his death. Her blood ran cold. Lord Vale had paid Marcus. Directly. 2,000 marks. More than enough to cover his debts to Howell. So why had Marcus still owed money? Where had the 2,000 marks gone? Footsteps in the hall. Eliza's heart stopped. She blew out the candle, shoved the ledger back in the drawer, and dove behind the desk just as the door opened. Light spilled in, Lord Vale's voice annoyed. "Don't care what time it is. Send the message tonight." Someone responded, a man, younger. "And if he refuses?" "He won't. He knows what happens to people who refuse me." "Yes, sir." The footsteps retreated, the door closed. Eliza stayed frozen behind the desk, barely breathing. Lord Vale walked to the window. She could see his legs, his shadow on the wall. He stood there for a long time, just standing. Then he spoke, quiet enough that Eliza almost missed it. "Clever girl." Her heart hammered. Did he know she was there? "You think you're so smart," Lord Vale continued, still looking out the window. "Sneaking around, looking for answers. But you don't understand what you're dealing with. You don't understand what your brother found, what Marcus found, what they both died for." He wasn't talking to her. He was talking to himself, or to a ghost. "They thought they could expose me," he said. "Thought they could bring it all down with evidence and righteous anger. But they forgot one thing. I own the people who matter, the magistrates, the police, the newspapers. Even if they'd succeeded, even if they'd published every damning word, nothing would have changed. Because people don't want change. They want order, security, and I provide that." He turned away from the window, walked to the desk. Eliza held her breath. He opened the drawer, the one she'd broken into. Silence. Then, "Interesting." He knew. He knew she'd been here. Lord Vale took out the ledger, flipped through it, set it on the desk. "Come out, Eliza." She didn't move. "I know you're here. I could hear you breathing when I came in. Come out, or I'll have the guards drag you out." Slowly, Eliza stood. Lord Vale looked at her with something like admiration. "You're better at this than I expected," he said. "Most people would have run, or tried to lie. But you just adapted. I respect that. Are you going to kill me? Probably not. You're still useful." He gestured to the ledger. "What did you find?" "You paid Marcus 2,000 marks." "I did." "Why?" "Because he asked nicely." "That's not an answer." Lord Vale sat in his chair. "Marcus came to me 6 months before he died. Said he'd found something. Something I'd want kept quiet. He offered to forget what he'd learned in exchange for money. 2,000 marks to clear his debts and disappear. I agreed." Eliza's stomach turned. "He was blackmailing you. He was negotiating. There's a difference." "What did he find?" "The same thing you're looking for. Evidence of what the guild really does. Where the money really goes, who really benefits. Tell me." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm going to find out anyway, and you know it." Lord Vale studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed. "You're right, you will. You're too stubborn not to." He opened the ledger. "The Creditors Guild isn't just about collecting debts, Eliza. It's about control. We loan money to people who can't pay it back. They default. We take their assets, homes, businesses, land. Then we sell those assets to people who can use them. Factories need workers. Workers need housing. We provide both. At a profit. You're stealing from people. I'm creating efficiency. The system works because everyone gets what they need. Workers get jobs. Factories get labor. The guild gets paid. And the people who lose their homes? They shouldn't have borrowed money they couldn't repay." Eliza wanted to scream. You're destroying lives. I'm running a business. You're running a prison." "Same thing." He said it so casually, like it didn't matter, like people were just numbers in his ledger. "Marcus figured it out," Eliza said. "He was going to expose you. He tried, collected evidence, talked to people, even got your brother involved. Daniel, was it? They were working together, planning to take everything they'd found to the newspapers." Eliza felt like the floor had dropped out. "Daniel knew?" "He knew everything. He and Marcus were quite the team. Your brother had the access, worked in the guild office, saw the records. Marcus had the connections, could verify the information, find witnesses. Together, they almost succeeded. Until you stopped them. until they made mistakes. Marcus got greedy, decided blackmail was safer than exposure. Daniel refused, tried to go forward alone. Lord Vale closed the ledger. Your brother died because he thought truth mattered more than power. A noble sentiment, also a fatal one. Eliza's vision blurred. She'd thought Daniel died because he stole from the guild. Petty theft. A stupid mistake. But he'd been trying to save people, trying to expose the whole corrupt system, and he died for it. You had him killed, she said. I had him removed. The method was Howell's choice. And Marcus? Marcus ran. Realized too late that I'd never let him leave. Brennan caught up with him 3 days later. The rest you know. Eliza's hands were shaking, with rage, with grief, with the weight of everything she'd just learned. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you asked, and because it doesn't matter. Lord Vale stood. You can't do anything with this information. You have no proof, no evidence, no way to leave this estate without my permission. You're trapped, Eliza, just like everyone else. Adrian will come back. Will he? I sent him home. He's resuming his duties. By the time the month is over, he'll have forgotten all about you. You don't know him. I know he's my son, and I know how to control him. Lord Vale walked to the door. You wanted the truth. Now you have it. Sleep well. He left. Eliza stood in the study, surrounded by ledgers and secrets and the truth that her brother had died trying to expose. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to break everything in the room. Instead, she sat down at the desk and started memorizing numbers. The next morning, Eliza acted like nothing had happened. She ate breakfast, read in the library, smiled at Mrs. Henshaw. But she was planning. Lord Vale thought she was trapped. He was wrong. She had 2 weeks left. 2 weeks to find real evidence, something concrete enough that even Lord Vale couldn't suppress it. And she knew where to start. That afternoon, she approached Mrs. Henshaw in the hallway. I'd like to write a letter, Eliza said, to my former employer. Let him know I'm well. Mrs. Henshaw looked uncomfortable. His lordship said I couldn't contact Adrian. He didn't say anything about Mr. Grimsby. Eliza smiled. Unless you'd like to check with him? The threat was subtle but clear. Mrs. Henshaw didn't want to bother Lord Vale with trivial matters. I suppose a letter would be acceptable, she said slowly. I'll need to review it before it's sent. Of course. Eliza wrote the letter in her room, kept it simple, told Grimsby she was staying with family for a month, asked him to send her favorite book, a copy of Blackstone's commentaries she'd been reading. What she didn't write, but what Grimsby would understand, she needed legal reference. Something was wrong. Send help. Mrs. Henshaw read the letter, found nothing suspicious, and promised to post it that afternoon. 2 days later, a package arrived, inside Blackstone's commentaries, and tucked between the pages a note in Grimsby's cramped handwriting. Adrian came by. Told me everything. We're working on it. Stay safe. Don't do anything stupid. Eliza smiled. She wasn't alone. The next week, Eliza played the long game. She attended dinners with Lord Vale, asked questions about the estate, about the factories, about business operations, all innocent, all calculated to make him think she was accepting her situation. And slowly, carefully, he started trusting her. He showed her the grounds, introduced her to managers who visited, even let her sit in on a meeting about factory production. Eliza listened, learned, memorized names and numbers and connections. She learned that Lord Vale's partner in the guild was a magistrate named Whitmore, that the local newspaper editor was on the payroll, that 3 police captains received monthly stipends to look the other way. She learned the system wasn't just corrupt, it was organized, efficient, built to protect itself. But every system had weaknesses. She just had to find them. The breakthrough came on day 20. Lord Vale had a visitor, a nervous man in an expensive coat who smelled like cigars and desperation. They met in the study with the door closed. Eliza, passing by on her way to the library, stopped to listen. Can't keep doing this, the nervous man was saying. People are asking questions. The numbers don't add up. Then make them add up, Lord Vale said. I've tried. But the discrepancies are too large. If anyone audits the accounts, no one will audit the accounts. I own the auditors. What about Parliament? There's talk of an investigation. There's always talk. It never amounts to anything. This time might be different. They're sending someone from London, someone who can't be bought. Silence. Then Lord Vale's voice, sharp. Who? Inspector Carrington. He's already in Ashford, asking questions about labor practices, about the guild. If he finds the connection, he won't. How can you be sure? Because I'll handle it. The nervous man left shortly after. Eliza slipped into the library before he could see her. Inspector Carrington. Someone from London who couldn't be bought. That was the weakness. The crack in Lord Vale's armor. If Eliza could get information to Carrington, real evidence, the kind that couldn't be ignored, maybe he could do what Daniel and Marcus couldn't. But she had to move fast. She had 10 days left. After that, Lord Vale would have no reason to keep her alive. That night, Eliza went back to the study. She spent 4 hours going through every drawer, every file, every scrap of paper. She found contracts, letters, more ledgers. And finally, she found it. A letter from Magistrate Whitmore to Lord Vale, dated 2 months before Marcus's death, discussing the problem of workers organizing, suggesting permanent solutions. Another letter from the newspaper editor, promising to suppress any stories about guild practices in exchange for continued payments. A third letter, this one from Howell himself, detailing exactly how they'd handle debtors who talk too much. It was all there. Everything Daniel and Marcus had died trying to prove. Eliza took the letters, hid them in her room under a floorboard she'd pried loose. Then she wrote another letter to Grimsby. Tell Adrian I have it. Everything we need. Get me out. She gave the letter to Mrs. Henshaw the next morning and waited. 3 days passed. No response. Eliza tried not to panic. Maybe the letter hadn't reached Grimsby. Maybe Adrian was still in Ashford, still searching. Maybe she was running out of time. On day 26, Lord Vale summoned her to his study. She knew, walking down that hallway, that something had changed. The servants were avoiding her eyes. Mrs. Henshaw looked frightened. Lord Vale was standing at his desk. The drawer was open. The hiding place where she'd taken the letters. Empty. Did you think I wouldn't notice? He asked. Eliza said nothing. Did you think I wouldn't be watching? That I'd just let you wander around my house stealing things? I wasn't. Don't lie. I respect you too much for that. He held up the letters, the ones she'd hidden in her room. You were clever, I'll give you that, but not clever enough. Eliza's mind raced. How had he found them? She'd been careful. She'd checked for servants, for witnesses. Unless Mrs. Henshaw works for me, Lord Vale said, reading her expression. She's worked for me for 30 years. Did you really think she'd help you? Eliza felt the trap close around her. Here's what's going to happen, Lord Vale continued. You're going to write another letter to Adrian. You're going to tell him you've decided to stay, that you've seen the benefits of cooperating with me, that he should do the same. No, then you'll die. Tonight. An accident. A fall from the window. Tragic. Adrian will be devastated, but he'll recover, and he'll come home like I always planned. He'll know you killed me. Will he? Or will he think you tried to escape and fell? Either way, the result is the same. You're gone. He's home. I win. Eliza looked at the man who'd killed her brother, who'd killed Marcus, who'd built an empire on suffering and called it business. You're wrong, she said. About what? About winning. Eliza smiled. I did send a letter to Grimsby, the real one, 3 days ago. But I didn't ask for help. I told him where to find Inspector Carrington. I gave him names, dates, everything I memorized from your ledgers. Lord Vale's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened on the desk. You're bluffing, he said. Am I? You want to bet your empire on it? They stared at each other. Then from outside, the sound of horses, carriages arriving. Lord Vale went to the window. Eliza couldn't see his face, but she heard his sharp intake of breath. What have you done? He asked quietly. I told you. I sent the real evidence to someone who actually cares about justice. Footsteps in the hall, heavy, multiple people. The study door burst open. A man in a dark coat entered, older, gray-haired, with the bearing of someone used to authority. Behind him, 3 constables. Lord Vale, the man said. I'm Inspector Carrington. I'm here to discuss certain irregularities in your business practices. Lord Vale turned from the window. His face was calm, composed. Inspector, this is highly irregular. If you'd sent word ahead— I did. You ignored it. Carrington gestured to the constables. We have a warrant to search the premises. We'll be seizing all financial records related to the Creditors Guild. On what grounds? Fraud, extortion, conspiracy to commit murder. Carrington looked at Eliza. Is this the young woman who contacted Mr. Grimsby? Yes, said a voice from the doorway. Adrian. Eliza's knees nearly buckled. He was here, actually here, covered in road dust, looking exhausted and furious and alive. Adrian, Lord Vale said, this is a misunderstanding. Shut up. Adrian crossed the room to Eliza. Are you all right? She nodded. Couldn't speak. Good. He turned to his father. You're done. Everything Eliza found, everything Marcus and Daniel died trying to prove, it's all going to Inspector Carrington. Every ledger, every bribe, every name in that network you built, it's over. Lord Vale's composure cracked, just a little, but enough. You don't understand what you're doing, he said. The system, the factories, the jobs are built on suffering, Adrian finished. I know. I've seen it. And I'm not going to let it continue. Carrington gestured to the constables. Search everything. I want every document in this study cataloged and removed. They moved fast. Professional. Within minutes, they were loading ledgers and files into crates. Lord Vale watched his empire being dismantled, page by page, secret by secret. You'll regret this, he said to Adrian, both of you. When the factories close, when people lose their jobs, when Ashford collapses, you'll remember this moment and know it was your fault. Maybe, Adrian said, but at least we'll know we tried to do something right. He took Eliza's hand, and they walked out of that study together. Outside the estate, the air tasted like freedom. Eliza stood on the gravel drive, watching constables carry crates of evidence to waiting carriages. Adrian was beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Neither of them had let go of the other's hand since leaving the study. Inspector Carrington emerged from the house, brushing dust from his coat. He looked tired, but satisfied. The expression of a man who'd been chasing something for a long time and finally caught it. Miss Harrow, he said, I owe you considerable thanks. The information Mr. Grimsby provided was extensive, but your corroboration made it actionable. I just memorized what I saw, Eliza said. You did more than that. You risked your life. Carrington glanced at Adrian. Both of you did. That takes courage. Or stupidity, Adrian muttered. Sometimes they're the same thing. Carrington gestured to the carriages. We'll need formal statements from both of you. Tomorrow, if you're willing. Tonight. Get some rest. You've earned it. He climbed into one of the carriages. The convoy pulled away, taking with it 30 years of Lord Vale's carefully constructed corruption. Eliza watched until they disappeared down the tree-lined drive. Is it really over? She asked. The arrests? Yes. The trial? That'll take months, maybe years. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. But the immediate danger, that's done. You're safe. We're safe. We're safe, he agreed. They stood there in the fading afternoon light, neither quite believing it was real. Then Eliza started laughing. It came out sharp and a little hysterical, the kind of laughter that was one step away from crying. Adrian looked at her with concern, which only made her laugh harder. Sorry, she managed. I can't believe we actually did it. We took down your father. We exposed the guild. She doubled over, gasping. We didn't die. Yet, Adrian said, but he was smiling. Day's not over. That sobered her. What about Lord Vale? What happens to him? Carrington has enough evidence to charge him with fraud, conspiracy, accessory to murder. If the trial goes well, and it should, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Good. Yeah. Adrian looked back at the house, the place he'd grown up, the place that had shaped him. Good. They started walking, not toward the house, but away from it, down the drive, past the iron gates that stood open like a mouth. Where are we going? Eliza asked. Anywhere but here. That's not a plan. It's the best I've got. Fair enough. They walked in silence for a while, leaving the estate behind. The road stretched ahead of them, empty, dusty, leading back toward Ashford or somewhere else entirely. Finally, Adrian stopped. "I need to tell you something," he said. Eliza's stomach dropped. Here it was, the other shoe, the part where he explained why this couldn't continue. "All right," she said carefully. "When I left you here, when I went back to Ashford, I thought I was going to find evidence, proof of what my father had done. Instead, I found Grimsby. And he showed me your letters. The real ones, I mean. The ones you sent before my father caught you. I wasn't sure they'd reach him. They did, every single one. And reading them, seeing what you'd found, what you'd risked." Adrian turned to face her. "Eliza, you didn't just expose my father. You exposed the entire system. The bribes, the corruption, the way the guild operates. Carrington's not just arresting my father. He's dismantling everything, the whole network." "That's good, isn't it?" "It's terrifying, because you were right. When the factories close, when the guild falls apart, people will suffer. Workers will lose jobs. The economy will collapse. And they'll blame us." Eliza had thought about this. Late at night in that guest suite, staring at the ceiling, she'd imagined the consequences. "So what do we do?" she asked. "We fix it, differently this time." Adrian reached into his coat, pulled out a folded paper. "I've been working on something, with Grimsby and a few others. People who actually care about Ashford. We're forming a cooperative, workers buying shares in the factories, setting their own wages, their own hours, making it fair. Your father will fight that. My father's going to prison, and I'm his heir, which means," Adrian's voice caught, "which means the factories are mine now, the estate, everything, and I'm going to use it to build something better." Eliza stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. But I can't do it alone. I need people who understand what it's like to work those shifts, to live on those wages, people who know what needs to change. People like me. Exactly like you." He was offering her something bigger than escape, bigger than survival. He was offering her the chance to rebuild the system that had killed her brother. "That's insane," she said. "Probably. It'll take years, at least. And it might not work." "It might not," Adrian agreed. "But we have to try, don't we?" Eliza looked at this man who'd gone from stranger to partner in less than a month, who'd gambled his life on cards and his future on her judgment. Who was standing here offering to burn down his inheritance and rebuild it from scratch? "Yeah," she said, "we do." Adrian smiled, that crooked, genuine smile she'd first seen in the broken helm. "Is that a yes?" "That's a let's talk about details before I commit to anything." "Fair enough." They started walking again, this time toward Ashford. The next weeks were chaos. Lord Vale's arrest sent shockwaves through the city. The newspapers, the ones that weren't on his payroll, ran the story on every front page. Industrial lord charged with murder. Creditors' guild exposed as criminal enterprise. Worker's son brings down father's empire. That last one made Adrian wince every time he saw it. The trial started in November. Cold rain and colder courtroom, packed with spectators who wanted to see a powerful man fall. Eliza sat in the gallery and watched Lord Vale maintain his composure through 3 weeks of testimony. She testified on day 12, told the court everything she'd found in the study, every ledger, every bribe, every name. The defense tried to discredit her, called her a liar, a gold digger, someone with an agenda. Adrian's testimony the next day demolished that argument. He corroborated everything Eliza had said, added details about Marcus, about Daniel, about the systematic abuse of power. When he mentioned Marcus, his voice broke. The courtroom went silent. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Lord Vale showed no emotion as the verdict was read, just stood there in his expensive suit, hands clasped behind his back, looking like he was attending a business meeting. The judge sentenced him to 20 years. He'd be 80 before he was eligible for parole. Adrian didn't attend the sentencing, couldn't stomach watching his father be led away in chains. Instead, he stood outside the courthouse with Eliza, listening to the crowd's reaction when the sentence was announced. Cheering, actual cheering. "They're happy," Eliza said. "They should be. It's over." But it wasn't over. Not really. The guild's collapse left a vacuum. Debts that had been enforced through violence were suddenly unenforceable. Howell and Brennan were arrested, Brennan for Marcus's murder, Howell for conspiracy and extortion. Their organization fell apart within days, which meant people who owed money suddenly didn't. But it also meant people who'd loaned money legitimately were never getting paid back. The economic chaos was immediate. 2 factories closed in the first month. Workers who'd depended on those wages found themselves unemployed. Shops that had catered to factory workers shuttered their windows. The whole ecosystem that had grown up around Lord Vale's empire started dying. And people were angry. They held meetings in the town square, demanded answers, demanded solutions. Some blamed Lord Vale. Others blamed Adrian for destroying his father's businesses without having a replacement ready. "They're not wrong," Adrian said one night. He and Eliza were in Grimsby's bookshop, going over plans for the cooperative. "I took down the system without building a new one first." "That was stupid." "You didn't have time to build a new one first," Eliza said. "Your father would have killed us both." "Doesn't change the fact that people are suffering now because of what we did." "People were already suffering, just differently. Tell that to the woman who lost her job at the textile mill. Tell her suffering is the same whether she's exploited or unemployed." Eliza didn't have an answer for that. Grimsby, sitting by the fire with a book he wasn't reading, spoke up. "You can't fix everything immediately. Systems take time to change. The question is whether you're committed to seeing it through." "I am," Adrian said. "Then stop wallowing and get back to work." So they did. The cooperative started small. 20 workers from the closed factories, pooling what little money they had to buy equipment. Adrian provided the building, one of his father's warehouses, sitting empty, and technical expertise. Eliza handled organization and outreach. They called it the Ashford Workers Collective. The first month, they barely broke even. The second month, they turned a small profit. By the third month, they had a waiting list of people wanting to join. It wasn't a revolution. It was slow, grinding work. Negotiations and compromises and learning how to run a business democratically, which turned out to be much harder than having one person make all the decisions. But it was working. By spring, they'd reopened 2 of the closed factories under worker ownership. By summer, 4 more. The model wasn't perfect. There were disputes about wages, about working conditions, about who got to vote on what decisions. But people had a voice. That was new. One evening in late August, Eliza was walking home from the collective's newest factory when someone called her name. She turned. A woman in her 40s, thin and tired-looking, was approaching. Eliza recognized her from somewhere but couldn't place it. "You probably don't remember me," the woman said. "I'm Sarah Caldwell. I ran the boarding house where Marcus Vale lived." Memory clicked. "Mrs. Caldwell? Yes, I remember. I wanted to thank you for what you did. For Marcus. For all of them." Eliza felt uncomfortable. "I didn't do it alone. But you started it. You and Mr. Vale. My son, he works at the collective now, one of the new factories. He comes home with energy instead of just exhaustion. He talks about his work like it matters. I haven't seen that in years." "I'm glad." Mrs. Caldwell reached out, squeezed Eliza's hand. "Marcus would be proud. What you did, what you're doing, it's what he wanted. A system that doesn't just use people up and throw them away." She left before Eliza could respond. Eliza stood on the street corner, feeling the weight of that gratitude. It wasn't the first time someone had thanked her, probably wouldn't be the last. But it still felt strange. She'd started this trying to save one man, ended up changing an entire city, or at least trying to. Adrian found her there 10 minutes later, still standing on the corner like she'd forgotten how to walk. "You all right?" he asked. "Someone just thanked me for destroying their landlord's life." "Ah, that's been happening a lot lately." "Does it get easier?" "No idea. Still waiting to find out." They walked together through Ashford's streets. The city looked different now, not better exactly, but different. The factories that were running had cleaner air stacks. The workers walking home looked less beaten down. Small changes, but real. "I've been thinking," Adrian said. "Dangerous. About what you said. That first night in my room. About delaying death versus saving lives." Eliza remembered. It felt like years ago instead of months. "We delayed a lot of deaths," Adrian continued. "Mine, yours, the workers who would have died in unsafe conditions. But saving lives, actually building something that lasts, that's harder. Slower. Are you having doubts?" Every day. But then I see something like Mrs. Caldwell's son, or the new safety standards we implemented, or the fact that children aren't working 16-hour shifts anymore. And I think maybe we're doing it, actually doing it. They reached the bookshop. Grimsby had already closed for the night, but he'd left the back door unlocked for them. They'd been using the shop as unofficial headquarters for the collective. Grimsby didn't mind, said it brought in customers who saw the activity and got curious about the books. Inside, someone was waiting. Inspector Carrington. Looking older than he had at the estate, more tired. He stood when they entered. "Mr. Vale, Miss Harrow, I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," Adrian said. "Is something wrong?" "On the contrary, I wanted to update you on the broader investigation." Carrington pulled out a notebook. "Based on the evidence you provided, we've made arrests in 3 other cities. Similar operations to your father's guild. Magistrates, businessmen, even a few members of parliament. The network was larger than we initially thought." Eliza felt dizzy. "How much larger?" "National, possibly international. We're still unraveling it. But your father wasn't the architect. He was just one node in a much bigger system." "So it's not over," Adrian said. "Not even close. But it's damaged, exposed. That's something." Carrington closed his notebook. "I wanted you to know because you started this. You should see it through." "We're busy with Ashford," Eliza said. "I know. And that work is important. But there are other cities, other workers being exploited the same way. They need people who understand how to fight this, people who've done it before." He wasn't asking them to abandon Ashford. He was asking them to expand. "I can't," Adrian said immediately. The collective needs to be sustainable without you," Carrington interrupted. "Otherwise, it's just replacing one person's power with another's. You've built the foundation. Let others build on it." Eliza looked at Adrian, saw him wrestling with it. Responsibility versus impact, local versus national. "Think about it," Carrington said. "No rush, but the offer stands. We could use people like you." He left. Eliza and Adrian sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Eliza spoke. "He's not wrong. About the collective. We can't run it forever." "I know. And there are other cities. Other people suffering the same way Daniel and Marcus did." "I know that too." "So?" Adrian looked at her. "What do you want to do?" It was the first time he'd asked her that. Really asked, not assuming, not planning. Eliza thought about Ashford, about the bookshop and the factories and the streets she'd known her whole life, about the people who were just starting to believe things could be different. Then she thought about other cities, other workers, other systems that needed breaking. "I want to finish what we started," she said. "All of it, not just Ashford. Everything." Adrian smiled. "That's going to take a while. Probably the rest of our lives." "Is that a commitment I'm hearing?" Eliza felt her face heat. They'd been avoiding this conversation for months. Too busy, too much work, too complicated. "Maybe," she said. "Depends on what you're offering." Adrian reached across the table, took her hand, the same way he had outside his father's estate, the same way he had a dozen times since. "I'm offering partnership, real partnership. Not the fake marriage we used to survive. Actual—" He paused, searching for words. "Actual partnership. Building something together. Fixing what's broken. Making it better." "That's not very romantic." "I'm not very romantic. I've noticed." "Is that a problem?" Eliza squeezed his hand. "Not even a little." They sat there in Grimsby's bookshop, surrounded by books and plans and the blueprints for a better world. And for the first time since that night in Craven Alley, Eliza felt like she could breathe. The wedding happened in December. Not a grand affair. Neither of them wanted that. Just a small ceremony in the courthouse, witnessed by Grimsby and Mrs. Caldwell and a handful of workers from the collective. Eliza wore a simple dress. Adrian wore the same coat he'd worn to the trial. The magistrate, a new one, appointed after the old one was arrested, performed the ceremony in less than 5 minutes. "Do you take this woman?" "Yes." "Do you take this man?" "Yes." "Then by the power vested in me." They were married before the magistrate could finish the sentence. Afterward, there was cake at the bookshop, cheap wine. Someone played a fiddle. People danced in the aisles between shelves. Grimsby gave a toast that was mostly incomprehensible but clearly heartfelt. Mrs. Caldwell cried. One of the factory workers made a joke about aristocrats marrying commoners that made everyone laugh except Adrian, who looked vaguely embarrassed. It was perfect. Late that night, after everyone had left, Eliza and Adrian sat in the empty bookshop. "We did it," Eliza said. "Did what?" "Everything. Survived. Exposed your father, started the collective, got married. We actually did all of it. We're not done yet." "I know, but we're winning. That's new." Adrian pulled her close. She rested her head on his shoulder, felt his heartbeat steady and strong. "I never thanked you," he said quietly, "for that night in the alley, for saving me. You've thanked me about 100 times. Not properly. Not—" He pulled back to look at her. "Eliza, you changed my life. You changed this entire city. You took a stupid, reckless gamble on a stranger and turned it into something that matters. I don't have words for that." "Then don't use words." He kissed her, not desperate like in the alley, not performative like in front of the enforcers, just real, honest. The kind of kiss that said, "This is us, and we're choosing this, and we're not done yet." When they pulled apart, Eliza was smiling. "What?" Adrian asked. "I'm just thinking about how far we've come. A month ago, I was a bookshop clerk with no prospects. Now what am I exactly? A revolutionary, an organizer, my wife. Take your pick." "I like the sound of revolutionary." "I thought you might." They sat together in the quiet bookshop, planning their next move. Because there would be a next move. There always was. Other cities to visit, other systems to challenge, other people who needed someone to take that first reckless step. But tonight they could rest. Tonight they could be two people who'd survived impossible odds and come out stronger. Tonight they could just be Eliza and Adrian, married and alive and ready for whatever came next. Outside, Ashford slept. The factories were quiet. The streets were empty. The city was changing, slowly, one day at a time. And in a bookshop that smelled like old paper and new possibilities, two people who'd started as strangers sat together and imagined a better world. Then they got up and started building it. Because that's what they did. That's what they'd always do.